Hey everybody, Zach here, and welcome to the 30th lesson of this RTS tutorial series. This lesson aims to set up everything we need to carry forward with the rest of this section. And therefore, we have a few things we need to do. We need to import our meshes and set up a preview master and a building master blueprint for each set. We need to combine our current main user interfaces into one and add our construction buttons to that interface. And I'll explain why we're combining them in a little bit. We then need to create an interface to allow our new preview master blueprint to talk to the UI. And finally, we need to set up our controller to be able to deselect our previews. That said, fire up your editor and let's get started.
So here we are, as usual, back inside of our editor. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our import. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our RTS folder. We're going to go into our blueprints, and I'm going to create a new folder called Building Manager. All right, I could call it Buildings too, I guess. Actually, let's just do that, Buildings. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself because we haven't imported the meshes yet. So let's go back up to the RTS folder, go to our meshes. I'm just going to create two new folders. One's called the resources. I'll give you a hint where it's going in there. Just move those in there, not copy. And we'll do a new folder called buildings. And in this buildings folder, actually, I think I named it construction in my test file, but it doesn't matter. We're going to import our barracks, our factory, our silo, and our training post. Import all, and you can ignore this. These are just placeholder textures anyway. Just going to drag them out to make sure. Oh, I have them all selected, unfortunately, so it's going to look a bit weird. There we go. All right. I seem to be missing one, mostly because it's hidden inside of there. There it is. All right, so all four properly loaded in. That's lovely. Just gonna quickly save everything. And now let's go back to our buildings folder. And in our buildings folder, I'm gonna create 4 new subfolders. One will be industrial, which our factory will go into. One will be military, which our training post will go into. One will be residential, which our barracks will go into, and other residential buildings later on. Now I'm going to have a security and some other things as well. Why do I feel like I'm spelling residential wrong? Because I am. Speaking of which, someone finally noticed the typo from section 2 that I was joking about as I made. February for the entire series isn't spelled wrong. And then I'll have resource management, just so I don't get confused by multiple things. And I'm sure I've just spelled something wrong there, but I can't actually see with the microphone in the way. I'm going to create 2 new blueprints. These will both be of class of actor. And we'll start with the more complex one first. We'll do RTS Building Master BP. I said I'm going to create 2 new blueprints. I'm going to create 2 new masters. We're actually going to duplicate this as a child 4 times real quick, just so we have it ready to go. And the first one we'll do will be our RTS Industrial Building Master BP. Just go ahead and move that into the industrial. The next one we will do will be our RTS Military Buildings, our Building Master BP. Go ahead and move that into the military folder. We'll do our residential the same way. So residential building master BP. Now, the reason why we're creating children are that children inherit all the properties of their parents. So anything we do to this blueprint will translate across to the 4 children we're creating. Now, the last one's our resource. I'm just going to call it Resource Building Master BP. And just move that into there. All right, so inside of our Resource Master, let's just pin that to the correct spot. We are going to set up a few little things in here. First, I'm going to do add component. I'm going to do my billboard. And I am going to set my billboard as my root, so just drag it over like I just did. And then I'm going to add a static mesh. Select that static mesh, and this will be my building mesh. There we go. I'm just going to compile and save. That's going to go down to all the children, so they all now have that set up. And just to make my life a tiny bit easier, I will create a new variable, which will be my player controller reference. This will of course be of type RTS player controller BP. It will be a reference. I'm saying reference a lot more this time around because we will be doing things that aren't actually references to the classes we're creating. We'll actually do class references later on. So we'll get classes instead. And I'm going to add in another variable, which will be my display mesh. And this will be a static mesh. And this is what we'll edit later on to make the different type of textures we're going to, or to display the different type of textures we're going to use. Both these two new variables will be exposed and we can edit them. There we go. Alright, that sets that up for now. We're just going to add a little bit more in here in our construction script. We are going to set up our, just to make it so it works a little bit better down the road, when this gets built or when anything gets constructed, it's going to add in that mesh right away. So set static mesh, and we want it as our building mesh. So it already has that bracket building mesh there. Select it. You'll see it puts that building mesh pin in for us. Just going to drag it down here. And the display mesh will be the new mesh that's going in. And we're going to have some stuff coming off here later on for our construction, but we'll worry about that in a couple of videos. For now, just compile and save. Let's go to our event graph and just clear out what we don't need just so we don't have the overhead there. Compile and save yet again. And we're now done with the building master. We will come back to this one in a few videos, but for now we are completely done with it. What we now need to do is create a new blueprint. Again, this will be of type actor, and this will be our RTS preview. Sorry, I was having previewing. I'm just going to call it preview. Yeah, preview building. I was going to call it preview master, but we don't create any children off of this actually, so we don't need that master. I use master to remind myself if it has children or not. Go ahead and open it up. And in here, we're just going to do a static mesh. We don't want the billboard this time around because we are going to anchor this to the mouse. This will be our preview building mesh, and this will be our root component. So just drag it over that original root, get rid of it. And again, we're going to create a reference to our player controller. So player controller ref. Again, this will be exposed and edit. Sorry, we can edit and expose on spawn. This will be a type RTS player controller. This will be an object reference. And I'll just put in my usual references folder. Okay. So this will contain our sort of preview, that grayed out, sort of ghostly looking building that we get when we start doing things. And we will add more functionality to this later on. But, you know, let's just have it set up and ready to go. Okay, so now that's all kind of basically there. I'm just going to go to my event graph and I'm going to delete this. And I am going to very quickly create the setup that we're going to use in the controller, which is a new custom function. We want a way to be able to delete the preview when we spawn in the actual building we're going to construct, and we need a way to delete the preview if we decide, hey, I don't want to build a building. So right click, add custom event, and this will be destroy preview. I almost wrote destroy kill for some reason. MDK. So what we're going to do here is actually we need to pass certain information through. So you know what, actually we'll worry about that later on. I just want this here so we can call it in our controller a little bit from now. We'll add functionality to this in the next video. Alright, so if we go back to our main folder, let's just test this out for a second. Let's go into here, into our industrial. Let's create a new child off this master, and this will be our RTS factory BP. Alright, if we go in here and you can see we have not seemed to inherit everything that I'm looking for. How odd is that? Okay, so I'm just double checking. File and save. It probably is there, I just can't see it right now, which is fine. That is fine. What matters is we have this for now. We can worry about the other stuff later on. Go to your display mesh, and this is our factory, so I'm just going to type in factory, and I'm going to select it. Now, it's on the map, we just can't see it because we're in the middle of it. There we go. So that's all set up. Compile and save. And we're going to do that for the other buildings as well. So we go, sorry, I meant to do our military first. So we'll create a child here. We'll do RTS training post BP. Open it up. And in our RTS training post self, we'll do our training post as our display mesh. Again, we're in the middle of it, so we can't see it too well. These things to the right here were meant to be either pull-up bars, target practice, so you can have something hanging from it. It's just all space, it's all placeholders anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And go back into our buildings, go to our residential, and just rinse and repeat this process. This will be our barracks BP. And of course, if I just type in barracks, we get our small little barracks building. Kind of looks like one of those Monopoly buildings. Compile and save. And then once again, for our resource management, we'll do our silo. So our RTS silo BP. And just type in silo. I don't think we need to zoom out for this one because I think it's right on top of us instead. Yep. There we go. Compile and save. All right, now we have all our buildings set up. The next thing we really need to do then is, well, deal with our UIs. And what we're going to do, sorry, that's the wrong section, is we're going to combine our game time and our resources. And the reason we're doing this is in my original setup, I had a different plan, and I found that it was just too complex to do easily, and it actually created more overhead. So by combining them, it was simpler and more efficient. So we're going to take everything from the resources and put it into the game time. So I'm just going to quickly rename this game time as main game UI. I'm just going to find references to it, make sure all the names are changed across. Just going to save all real quick. Yes. And I'm going to open up this one. We're just going to leave it for now. I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to open up the player resources. My mouse battery is dying, as you all saw, so hopefully it won't die in the middle of this, otherwise that will go really poorly for me. And by the way, for anyone who's curious, there is actually a more efficient way to do this UI than I have done. I'll give you a hint. You're going to want to look in your panels section for one of these that will actually make this setup a lot easier to use. But I leave that to you to work out, and I will actually cover it in probably after this section. I also owe you guys, so I just copied that by the way, I also owe you guys a fix to the age thing as well. I know. I'm just going to paste that into here, and it pasted better than it did my original copy. That's awesome. And the anchors will be at the top there. Just want to make sure everything's anchored in correctly. There we go. So all we need to do then is copy over our bindings. So I'm going to highlight this first one here, and just going to go over here to remind you that what our bindings are. We have our get wood resources and get ore. So I'm just going to copy everything in here, minus the return node and the input node there. I'm going to copy it, and this is our wood one. Did I grab wood first? I did. Awesome. And we'll do bind, and just going to quickly rename this as get wood resource amount. Spread that out a tiny bit. That's way more than I meant, but hey, it works. And drag that into here. And as you notice, we have a few grayed out variables, which is not unexpected. We have just copied things over from one blueprint, so from one class into another, and it doesn't know what these variables are. So we can very easily make them. I just noticed the mistake. I swear I copied the wood one. I'm in the ore one. Okay. Alright. Now that does not work well for what we're about to do here. So I'm just going to quickly rename this as get or, and I'll switch the bindings around in a second. I'll show you how to switch bindings real quick. So this is get or now, and we're going to right click this or, we're going to create local, because that's why we've named it local. We're actually just going to replace that reference with our player controller reference. Should have stuck with the same naming convention. That was completely on me. Again, right click, this is a local, and there we go. This is all set up. However, we have it on the wrong, sorry, let me go back to the designer. We have it on the wrong variable, so it should be on this one. So we're going to do get or on that, and we will remove binding from this one. Just double check that it hasn't done anything weird there. Nope. And then we will create binding, and this will be get wood resource amount. And let's go back into here and make sure I've opened the right one this time. Deselect everything we don't need, which is the return and input node. Control C for copy, and give us some room to play with, and just paste that in. And again, we're just rinsing and repeating. Move that there. Look, I hate when I grab it instead of getting the pin. Plug everything back in, and we will then create locals. Create local, replace the controller reference, and there we go. Now, there's one thing we have to do before we do this, just to show you why. If we hit play, I get something really weird looking. There you go. You have two of those things up there now. So let's just open up our player controller real quick, and let's take a look at, that is why I can't find what I'm looking for. I'm in the wrong thing. Let's take a look at our event begin play. In our event begin play, we have this set HUD visibility, and we have this resource HUD. First, let's get rid of this. We don't need it anymore. In fact, let's get rid of all of it. Leave that visibility in, because we will come back and we'll add other things that relate to visibility later on. But this just needs this for now. When I say this, I mean the HUD visibility, set HUD visibility function just needs our main HUD. And I'm going to rename this so I just HUD main game, just so I know what it is. And it's a really bad name. I did that on the fly here because I wasn't thinking clearly. Plug that into there, and then to save some resources, we no longer need to spawn that in. So we can get rid of the reference to that being spawned in. We can plug that into there, and I'm just gonna right click the HUD resources reference, and I'm gonna find, not rename, and I'm gonna find references. When there are no results found, that's good. If there are, go ahead, find them and remove them if you're following the same procedure I am, and then delete this. We no longer need it. Compile, save. Let's just make sure it's coming up correctly now. Yep, everything's still correct there. That is beautiful to me. Okay, now comes the kind of boring part of everything. We have to add in the build features onto our HUD. So let's go back to our designer here, and I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to copy this gray blob, and I'm just going to bring it down here. And I am going to cheat a tiny bit by looking at my test copy. And I'm going to set this to position 16 and to position -73. Don't worry, that will change in a second. I know it's over the bottom of the screen now, or over the bottom of the overlay there. And the size will be 590 in the X, and in the Y it will be 58. Still slightly different looking, but it works. So now that that's set up, what we're going to do is we're going to simply bring into it all of the buttons that we need. So I'm going to grab a horizontal box, and I'm just going to pin it there, and that horizontal box will get the same anchoring as the gray image, and I am going to set it position 20, and this will be -65. This will change, of course, as we go on. The size will change as we put items into it, so it's going to size to content. So first thing we're going to put in is our lovely, friendly, primitive spacer. And I'm just going to rename this box so I know what it is. And this is my construction buttons box. Our spacer here will have a padding of 5, just because I think it's the, not 0.05, that'd be really small. Just 'cause I think it's the best one we can do for that. And I'm going to grab a button, and I'm going to set the button into there. And I'll grab some text, put that into the, undo that, if it will let me. I went too far, sorry. Put the button back into the box. Put the text into the button. There we go. And I am going to grab yet another spacer before I do anything else. And it's just going to go right after the button. And this spacer will have a padding of 5 as well. There we go. And as for the text size, I am going to leave this at 24 for now. I am, however, going to select the button and the spacer behind it. I'm going to do copy, and I'm going to select the box overall. I'm going to hit paste. I'm going to do that again, and a third time. Sorry, I had highlighted the wrong thing. Currently, yes, we're over the gray box. That's fine for now. I'm just going to type in the name of into each of these text fields of what they are, and that should help us a bit. Factory. As you can see, it's getting smaller. And the next one is, this will be the long one, unfortunately. Training post. Don't know why it looks smaller in my test file, actually. This will be barracks. And then finally, sorry, that's my dog sneezing at his own fur in the background. This will be silo. Actually, that looks about the same now. Okay, that's wonderful. So, just going to close those things out. He is grumpy that the neighbor who's just moved in has decided to do some decoration. So she's removing wallpaper currently, I think, which is what he's huffing about. This will be our build factory button. This will be our factory button text. And this will be our build training post button. And this, again, you can kind of get what my naming convention is. Just so people are aware, I actually don't use a proper naming convention in this series. You know, I should be putting BP at the start typically, or S at the start for structures and things like that. I've been putting them at the end just because I'm doing this as a training to concept. So some of the workflow things are, or naming conventions are just a little bit off, just a tiny bit. And Boolean should actually start with a lowercase b, even if you are against that sort of naming convention, that lowercase at the start like I am. It really should have that lowercase b. So this is training post button text. I really need to turn that autosave back off. I keep saying that, but I haven't. This is build barracks button, and this is our barracks text, and this is our build silo button, and our build silo text. Let's compile and save. Let's just quickly make sure this actually shows up on the game. There it is at the bottom. Oh, I think the grays might be different on the test file because it's a little bit easier to see that gray there. All right. We can worry about that later. This is just, honestly, just filler right now. So the next thing we need to do before we do anything else is we need to create a new interface. So go to our library, which is, oddly enough, the spot I've been storing my interface. We'll go to blueprints, and we'll go to blueprint interface. And this will be RTS underscore construction IF for interface. And this will be construct building. Okay, so I'm going to pause for half a second to explain. Actually, no. I'll explain something after we finish just one step out. We are going to add in an input here. If it'll let me, there we go. And this will be our building master class. Let me also put the S into master. This is not a mother. Matter in Latin is mother. Dura mater, hard mother, part of the brain. So I'm going to go into this. I'm going to RTS building, RTS building master. Now, don't click quickly. We want to not have an object reference. I named this class for a reason. We want a class reference. So this is the type of building master that's coming through. So this will go and see there are different types of building master classes. We've created 4 children types, each with their own grandchildren. So we'll see all of these now. It will see the silo, it will see the barracks, it will see the training post, it will see the military master, it will see the resource management master, or whatever we name the middle step there. Now, instead of doing this, what I could do is I could create a variable for each of those children, and I can call those variables up as needed inside of, we can close that by the way, inside of our main HUD here. But instead of doing that, I could just use this to have the various parts of the game, so this talk to other parts. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go into graph, and like we did before, I'm going to go into my class defaults. So not my class defaults, my class settings. And we have our game time interface here. We're just going to add in another one. We're going to add in our construction interface. There we go. And next, I am going to go back to our preview. So I'm just going to drag this over here so they're next to each other. And I'm going to add that into here as well. I'm going to go to our class defaults, and we'll add in our construction. And what we'll do here is just, make sure this actually does something. We will, actually no, we're going to do that in the next video. Sorry, that is part of the next video. This is actually the next step. This is just going to allow for the blueprints, so these 2 blueprints, our HUD, to pass information from these buttons all the way over to our preview. So these will work together. And I don't know why I said I want to set up the controller, but since I said we'll do it in this video, well, let's just go ahead and do it. It kind of seems a little bit backwards. I think I'm trying to save time on the other video. So what we need to do is we need to consider what we have set up here. We have sorry, that's my dog shaking his body at me in the background because he now wants attention. Oh, sorry about that. So we have this is building active. We also have it down here. So our input secondary action isn't to place a building. Sorry, we actually have is unit selected. We should probably have this as well. So let me just copy that. And what we're going to do is we are going to say if they right click instead of left click, it's going to get rid of the preview. So it's not going to place anything, it's just going to delete it. So let's unhook this, and we're just going to plug that directly into the false. We're going to highlight all of this. Actually, first thing, we're going to take all of these, and we're just going to move these over here. This is to spawn in various things. And when I say various things, I mean our car versus our unit. That did not actually didn't go as well as I planned. I was going to, oh, sorry about that. What I was going to do is simply just move everything at one go and not reorganize it later on. But it did not work out to plan, sadly. Alright. It's still not working out to plan. That's just sad. I'm gonna cry now. Joking. Alright, so that's there. I'm just gonna grab all of this, and I am simply just gonna move this down here, just so I have a tiny bit of room. And all I need to do then is, that's how we're setting it up in this. I just remembered I'm skipping a step. There's a reason why I'm doing it in this video. Alright, so we have to also set up our call to our preview, and we're going to do that in a couple of steps. So remember, in our preview and in our master, we've made references to the player controller. So instead of casting, there are easier ways to do this. We're actually going to need this as well later on. So we're going to move this over here just so we have room to play with it. And we need more room on our event begin play. So we're just going to move the event begin play up. We are going to add in a couple more pins. And we are going to take this. Someone made a comment on an earlier video, and I just noticed I haven't done it in here. I did it in my test file, but we haven't done it, which is really weird. Sorry about that. So to the person who pointed out, we can set game mode, the mouse, in an easier way than we did earlier. Yes, you are completely correct. I swear that I had added this in. I am so sorry that I have skipped that. Okay, so first, set that to the second pin now. And what we're going to do is we're going to very quickly add in that thing I have totally forgot about, which off this third pin here. And this will be set input mode game mode, set input mode game and UI. So this allows us both to touch the interfaces that we have up and do things on the map. That sounds really inappropriate. We can touch the interfaces. And then get a reference to self, the player controller, because we are currently in the player controller. We do not want to hide the cursor at all. And later on we will want to lock this, but that is later on. So I'm just going to add a reroute in, which is not in the version in my test file, because my test file actually isn't all that pretty anymore. Drag that down there, and we're going to need a little bit of room here. And off this one pin, we are going to create our reference to, or sorry, we're going to spawn in our preview. So we're going to drag off, and we'll do spawn actor from class. And the class we are spawning in, let me just get us a reroute in there so I can make this look prettier as well. Put a reroute into here, and just drag that there. What we're going to spawn in from our class is our preview. So if I type in preview, we have our RTS preview building. And then we have our spawn transformation, which we need to put in, and we have our call to player controller. So instead of casting to player controller, we're just going to pass a reference like we did with the widgets in to self. This does the same thing as casting, but is less resource intensive. So there we are, we're passing that in. We want this to spawn no matter what, so it's always spawn, ignore collisions. Now, we want this to spawn in, and to do so, we need a transformation. Just remember, transformation, size, rotation, so scale, rotation, and location. To make my life easier, I'm just going to drag back off that and do promote to variable, and I'm going to just do an empty, so I'm just going to name this empty transform. And the reason why I named this empty transform, well, once I hit compile, and we click here, the transform is empty. It's all zeros at the default value of scale of 1, 1, 1. So it's going to spawn in nothing at nowhere, pretty much. That's all it's doing. That's all we want it to do. Now I need a reference. I need to make this into a reference. So I'm just going to pull off of here, and I'm going to promote to variable, and this will be my construction preview reference, or ref. This will, of course, go into my references folder. And I will deal with this empty transform. Actually, we'll do this as category will be our construction variables. There we go. We might change this empty transform later. I haven't decided actually how I want to handle some of the stuff that we can do with it. But there's some stuff we can do with it later on. So I'm going to grab this construction preview reference, and all I'm going to do is drag off of here and get my destroy. I almost hit and kill again. Destroy preview. So if it's true, if we are in build mode and we right click, then we want to destroy the preview so that we can leave the build mode, which is something we will set up in here. In fact, let me see how long this has been recording for. We are 33 minutes in, so actually we're not going to do that in this video. We'll set up the destroy preview in the next video because there are several steps that we'll take. However, what I am going to do is I'm just going to clean this up because that's going to drive me crazy. That's a lot of branches we're actually going through here. Let me just double check there isn't something we can do to make this even more fit. No, there isn't actually. I already know that. But we can do is get rid of that reroute. By the way, the reroutes aren't needed because I've been asked that too. They are just there to make this easier to read. I think I've said that in a few videos though. Okay, so we now have our buttons on screen. So we now have these buttons. They have no functionality yet, I realize. We click them, it does nothing. These buttons should still do stuff. There we go. We have our, usual thing up there. One really quick thing I want to show you that's kind of cool, and we'll actually expand this a little bit later on, is if we select this, we can go down and find tooltip text, and we can type in wood resource here, and let's just quickly hit play, and it now will put up wood resource. We'll actually do stuff where it puts up a new part of the widget that displays information about the wood resources, but that'll be a few sections from now, I think. Alright, that covers everything we need to do in this video. I'm just going to quickly save everything, and in the next video what we will do is we will set up our we will spawn in our test files, or our not test files, our previews, just to show you what they'll look like when they spawn in. If I just grab our factory, it's going to spawn in like that. As you can see, the factory is already there, and then we will have it follow the mouse. That said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and likes are appreciated. If you have, go ahead and hit that like button. It also helps get this tutorial out there and raises the attention of this the series' existence. If you want to see anything in particular, go ahead and put a comment down below. Let me know what's working for you, what isn't. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And as always, I hope that you have a wonderful day.